all. Thank you very much. God bless you all. Please be seated. First of all, I'm not your next speaker. I want to make that clear, because who would want to follow that? Well, it would probably take a Marine, and that's exactly who I'm going to introduce here. And I normally pick on him, but tonight I just want to introduce him because there are a couple of things I want to say about him. I think you all know Ollie North, and you know that he's a Naval Academy graduate of 1968. He went into the Marine Corps, wound up in Vietnam, and where he was wounded twice and also earned at least 2 and maybe 3 decorations for valor. He's a very courageous man, and that courage, I think we that are old enough to remember the Iran-Contra hearings, we saw that courage coming out as he sat before a very hostile group in the Senate and let his faith guide him through that. And ultimately, he came out on top. He came out in such a way that he became really the moderator or commentator for Fox News' longest program, which was called War Stories, until he left to go and be the president of the NRA. He was the host of the longest program on Fox News. He is, when he retired from the Marine Corps, he went into business, started his own company, but he also started something called the Freedom Alliance, and it has been my great privilege to be on the board of the Freedom Alliance, which is designed to support the military, to support military readiness, and to support the young men and women that have been wounded in combat. And he just returned today, about 9 o'clock, or about 12 o'clock, I think, from a pheasant hunt in North Dakota where he took wounded warriors. He took military people out there, and this is what he does. And I've just come to love him over the years for his heart. And by the way, sometime when I have an opportunity, I'll tell you how he saved my career in 1983. He was the former president of the National Rifle Association and a wonderful American. He is the epitome of both love for America and patriotism. Would you give my friend Oliver North a warm welcome to the Values Voters Summit?
Thank you all. It is great to be back with you again. I was outside with Tony, trying to figure out how many times have I done this. And I have to have a different speech every time. And it's a wonderful opportunity because, as always, you guys have a slogan that is absolutely relevant to the time that we're in. Last time I was here, it was, I think, Carpe Diem, seize the day. And I made a comment about the fact that the general and I were both in military organizations where Latin was the slogan. De oppresso libere, the motto of the Special Forces. Semper Fidelis, the motto of the Marine Corps. Unique organizations like the U.S. Coast Guard, Semper Paratus, always ready, are the kinds of things that, why are they teaching us Latin? Well, the fact is, those work. So does this year's slogan for the Voter Value Summit. Pray, vote, and stand together. Perfect for the time that we're in. Now, when I was here last year, I spoke to you about the Constitution and my concerns for the Second Amendment. And that's certainly still the case. But this year, it's not just the Second Amendment. We now need to protect and defend the First Amendment. Last night, a candidate for President of the United States was asked a question by CNN's Don Lemon. Here it is.
Do you think religious institutions like colleges, churches, charities, should they lose their tax-exempt status if they oppose same-sex marriage?
Yes.
Now, you heard that question. You heard that question. This is a man who would be President of the United States, instantly replying yes. And then you heard the applause from that group. You know, those words, attacking one of our most important rights as American citizens, were followed by that wild applause that should warn us about our duty for the next 13 months. Since December 15th, 1791, these words have been part of our Constitution. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or the press, or the right of the people to assemble and to petition the government for redress of grievances. That, of course, is the First Amendment to our Constitution, the leading and therefore the most important of our Bill of Rights, and the first clause is the protection of our religious liberty. Well, ours is still the only Constitution that recognizes God, not some prince or potentate, as the grantor of the blessings of liberty. Those words are there. Ours is the only Constitution with a Bill of Rights protecting every American citizen from the awesome power of government. And it's the only founding document giving every single law-abiding citizen the right to pray or not as we believe, to come and go as we want, to speak as we please, and among the other freedoms, the right to keep and bear arms. Ours is the only country on the planet Earth where every law officer, every member of the armed forces, every elected official, every judge takes an oath of office to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States. It's not a pledge to a pantheon of deities. It's not a person or a political party. It's the pledges to the Constitution, all of it. And by the way, that oath ends with the words, "So help me God." I've raised my hand and taken that oath and administered it hundreds of times since I first did so on the 29th of December, 1961. I solemnly swear to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, to bear true faith and allegiance to same, to take that obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion. Same oath that the man who just introduced me took an oath to support and defend. I've been blessed to keep company with soldiers, sailors, airmen, guardsmen, and Marines who took that oath to defend that same Constitution against all our adversaries, foreign and domestic. I've been blessed to keep company with them overseas as a Marine and as a war correspondent. In fact, it was an infantry officer whose faith led me to the certainty of Jesus Christ being my Lord and Savior. Last night's travesty on CNN was, of course, on CNN, so very few Americans actually got to see it. Yeah. But you are aware that there are those who wish to succeed Donald Trump as president who would defile our Constitution. The good news in all of that is that you do know that now, and that makes our duty clear. We, the people of faith, must pray, vote, and stand together to ensure that the most pro-life president in history remains in office for another 4 years. You know, I don't believe it was a coincidence that all that crowd revealed themselves as to what they are in that presentation last night. You know, I hear that word coincidence an awful lot nowadays. I was in the Denver airport yesterday trying to get home desperately, so I missed it seeing it live. But it was no coincidence that someone who cared a lot about me showed me that, what you just saw, that 16 seconds last night, when they all revealed themselves for what they are. Not a coincidence. I was approached while I was out there by another couple, because once you're holding a seance at gate 11 in Denver airport, large crowds of people gather around when you really don't need or want them. And so one of my fellow passengers came up to me and said, among I think all 185 of us that were on the airplane, said to me, "You know, it's a great coincidence, but I just learned that we were both born at Fort Sam Houston, Texas. I was born a whole lot later than you were, Colonel, but what a coincidence." And I don't think it was a coincidence. You know, I don't believe in coincidence. I just know that the reason I was born there is because God's hand was in the crafting of an executive order that was signed by the President of the United States on the 1st of February, 1941. That's not a coincidence. That's God's hand in the future of this country. That executive order created from the Salvation Army, the YMCA, and 4 other faith-based organizations. That executive order created an organization called the United Services Organization, the USO. Not a coincidence. It's not a coincidence that my mom and dad met at a USO dance in 1941. Not a coincidence that they got married the following year in Oswego, New York, and that by the time my dad was overseas, I was born in Fort Sam Houston. Not a coincidence. It was a few months ago at a change of command up at Indiantown Gap where we were recognizing the heroism of a U.S. Army colonel about to be promoted to brigadier general. And afterwards at the reception, an old guy in a walker comes over to me. He says, I just want you to know, I know that you were born at Fort Sam Houston in October of 1943. And I said, how do you know, sir? He said, I delivered you. And I said, is that so? He says, yes. And I'll tell you something else, Sonny, you don't know. You were sired, that's the word he used. You were sired right here at Fort Indiantown Gap. And I said, how do you know that, sir? He says, it's very simple. The 95th Infantry Division arrived at Fort Indiantown Gap in January of 1943, and we departed for Fort Sam Houston in April. Do the math, son, do the math. Not a coincidence. It wasn't a coincidence that our founders were inspired to create a new nation with a new form of government unknown on the planet Earth and still a novel idea in many places, that we, the people, could establish a government of, by, and for the people. That's not a coincidence. It's not a coincidence that the men and women in American uniforms have carried those ideals and that faith all around the world. I've been blessed to have spent most of my life among heroes like them. My dad and all my uncles, all my brothers served in uniform. For 18 years and 66 embeds, as my general was pleased to point out, 66 embeds, Fox News allowed me to keep company with American heroes. For some, a hero is someone who catches a pass in the end zone or sets a new Olympic record or climbs a mountain faster or further or higher than anybody else. And sometimes when you're talking to young people, you say the word heroes, you know they're thinking of someone wearing a spandex suit and a cape. Well, my heroes wear combat boots and flak jackets and dog tags, and other of my heroes wear badges and they carry guns and they go to work every day in harm's way. You see, the classical definition of the word hero is a person who puts themselves at risk for the benefit of others. Since 9/11/01, the very best and bravest of a generation of young Americans, more than 2.8 million of them, have put themselves in harm's way, protecting us and offering others the hope of freedom. My job is simply to let these heroes tell their stories without telling our enemies things that they don't know, shouldn't know. Here's what some of my heroes look like. In less than 2 minutes, these are some of the guys, 10,000s of which I've interviewed, soldiers, sailors, airmen, guardsmen, Marines, with whom I've been able to keep company. These are some of the dangerous things they do in the difficult places where they do it. The average recruit today averages 20 and a half years of age by the time they come into service, much older than when I served in a place called Vietnam. The average education, high school graduate, is minimum, but the average education is 13 and a half years. Much more likely to be married today than at any time in the history of our armed forces. And most of them have made multiple deployments, none in conditions that you could describe as pleasant. The enemies they face are vicious, brutal, often suicidal. They're the most inhumane we've encountered since the Pacific theater of World War II. They operate and maintain the most sophisticated weapons and equipment, like this V-22, that the world's ever seen. They've been taught chemistry and physics and ballistics and avionics and the kinds of things that they do with these remarkable weapons. They can save someone's life or take one's. They use their weapons like they're part of their bodies and their bodies like weapons. And their responsibility and accountability is absolutely beyond anything you could find in any corporation in America. For them, the expression, "I've got your back," isn't the slogan of a mattress company. Some of them like this Marine captain, have made an enormous sacrifice. And some of them just like this dog. This is Dexter, the IED detector, and that's Smitty, his handler. And they're getting ready to go on an operation. You're going to see more of them in just a few seconds. But this is the most remarkable protection you could ever find. And it's them, for them, that we've made so much of an investment. By the way, this is combat baseball. I just wanted you to see this. That's a bamboo bat and a rock, and the guy hits him below the belt, just go passing first base. I show you that because that lab is not a pet. It's Dexter, the best IED detector God ever created, and Smitty, his handler, and you're going to see more of them in just a few moments. Dexter is the first one off the helicopter or out of the vehicle on a combat operation. I went out with Dexter a bunch of times. I'd always follow Dexter right because I knew Dexter was not going to step on an IED, right? And the troops knew that too. So this is what happens when you're surrounded by people of faith. What you see right here are some guys that are going out on a military operation. You see the helicopters in the background. If you look on the right-hand side of the screen, that's Dexter. And the reason these guys are kneeling is because they know Dexter's going with them. That's important because the fact is, if you follow Dexter out, you're not going to get stepped on an IED, and we didn't. And so instead of just being a follower, that little group contains a first lieutenant in the United States Marine Corps. It contains a staff sergeant and several sergeants, and that's the leadership of a helicopter assault team going on the biggest helo-borne operation in all of Afghanistan. And Dexter is the only dog going on that mission. They're not high-fiving each other. They're not giving each other chest thumps. A lance corporal says, guys, Dexter's going with us. Let's kneel down and pray for him. That's leadership. That's the kind of thing that I get to see all the time out there in the field. No high fives. Now, that faith is not staged. These guys aren't going out on a football field on a Friday night. They're going into mortal combat with an enemy who wants to die killing them. And please don't misunderstand me. These are guys who can take vulgarity to the level of a new art form. I've heard it. I've seen it. But they're also not afraid to kneel down and pray or be seen reading from this book. And that's the kind of courage we need right now in this country. Unafraid to be seen kneeling in prayer. I seriously doubt that Beto O'Rourke or any of his lefty losers who were on CNN last night are going to tell those government employees to stop praying on government time. I dare them to try that. So what do? Well, here's what we have to do. We have to lead. We have to lead. You cannot, by the way, lead from behind. You have to model the behavior you expect from others. Servant leaders are the best leaders I've ever seen. Now, what do I mean by a servant leader? Think of this. How did you learn to tie your shoes? Someone knelt down in front of you and showed you how to do it. They didn't do a PowerPoint. They didn't give you a video. Someone, probably a mom or a dad, in most of our cases, knelt down in front of you. What's the role model for that? Jesus in the upper room, Thursday night, before he's going to be crucified, make the ultimate sacrifice for all of us. Jesus Christ does what? He wraps a towel around himself, takes a pan of water, and he washes their feet in the ultimate act, as we think of it in temporal terms, of a servant. That's who normally did that, sometimes a slave. That's the kind of leadership that we have to demonstrate. That's the kind of leadership we have to be part of. My Freedom Alliance, the general was kind enough to do that, has led the way in looking after the veterans of this war, those on active duty, the family members. We've awarded over $15 million in college scholarships to the children, orphans of those who've lost their lives fighting in this long war, and every other one coming up. We've got youngsters in college today who lost a dad in the Vietnam War, and we provide scholarships for them. Second part, we have to realize that the company we keep really matters. The company we keep is going to define who you are. Those with whom you surround yourselves ought to hold you accountable, encourage you in failure, admonish you to humility. Those are the kinds of people that we need on our side in this long fight. Fact of life, and I tell this to my grandkids, those with whom you associate are going to define who you are. So if we associate with those who have integrity, have the guts to just say no to unethical behavior, you can change things for the better. Don't let a day pass without saying, how can I help you? Never promise more than you can deliver, because unfulfilled expectations are the greatest cause of anger on the planet Earth. Think about it. How we behave is more important than what we say, but how we say it matters. I tell my grandkids, I'm not going to raise my voice with you, and I've succeeded so far. I got 18 of them now, 11 boys, 7 girls. Yeah, I'd like to take some credit, but they're all born between September 15th and November 15th. Tell me what's going on in the wintertime. Just do the math, son, do the math. I got hurt overseas, and I couldn't ski last year, so I took them all. I was the chauffeur. 8-year-old ski school in a Suburban. 10-year-old ski school, get ready to roll. And so I drove back and forth, and as I'm coming back into the ski place that Betsy rents every year out in West Virginia at Snowshoe, I'm coming back in, and as I walk in, there comes one of the little girls, boom, 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 down the stairs, and I catch her at the bottom. You know, it's a ski place, so the carpets are that thick. She's not hurt, but her ego is. She's whimpering a little bit, and I walk up because I know exactly what happened. The boy who's standing right up there who just did it. I mean, I may be crazy, but I'm not stupid. And I walk up to him without shelling. You just pushed your sister down the stairs. You apologize right now. And he looks up at me, uses my first name. He says, sir, that's not my sister, that's my cousin. You go get your father right now, whoever he is, and bring him right here. My other guidepost for my 11 grandsons is marry a Proverbs 31 wife. I did, and you marry up. A lot of you guys know what I'm talking about. If you don't know, when you get back to the hotel tonight, pull out the Bible, the Gideon Bible in there, read Proverbs 31, because it's the greatest kind of thing you can do. Last, let me just wrap this up real quick. Promote heroes. Promote heroes every way you possibly can. I've been blessed to be able to keep company with heroes. And not all of my heroes are in uniform. I was approached by the Carnegie Hero Commission to see if we could do something to help show what heroes look like who aren't in uniform. And so I want to just give you a little tease, and shameless self-promotion, we're looking for sponsors. But this is what the Carnegie Heroes program only gives medals to those who are Americans or Canadians. The act of heroism has to be in the United States or Canada, or the air above it and the water around it. And it has to be at risk of your own life, trying or succeeding to save the life of another. Here's one that's coming up.
It was a warm October night. My wife and I were getting ready for bed. All of a sudden I heard this loud crash. I knew immediately it was a MVA, a motor vehicle accident. I jumped out of bed and I told my wife I'm going to the call. She goes, I'm gonna go with you. 34 years, that was the first call she ever went on with me. Started walking up this way to the only car that I saw at this time. As I got to the back of her car, she got out and she was panicking that she hit somebody. She don't know what happened.
She's yelling, where's the person I hit? And as I got to the front of the car, I spotted the headlights of the car down the tracks, and I screamed to Pete, Pete, the car's down the tracks.
It's now pitch black. And as I'm running down the tracks, the signal gates come down. So now I know a train's coming. I yelled to her, I said, are you okay? Are you okay? She goes, I think I got into an accident. I think a car hit me. She didn't know she was on the tracks.
The lights were flashing. I could see the headlights coming around the bend, and I just kept waving my arms, trying to stop a train, screaming, stop, stop.
And now I can actually see the lights of the train, the horns blaring, the signal crossing, bing, 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 all these noises and lights. God, please don't let her foot be trapped.
It was either win or lose. He was either going to get her out and get to cover, or they were both going to die.
There was no other time. It was now or never. We were going to live or die together.
The train just passed, and all I heard was the crash. And I'm just standing there screaming and screaming. There was no way he could have made it out of there.
Tune in for the rest of the story. Remarkably enough, all those that I've interviewed for this show talk about their faith in God. And you can hear it in some of the cases, people shouting from nearby, pray for them. My urging for you is that you become like the most crucial element of all the military isn't all those remarkable technologies and the like. Actually, it's because we've got recruiters and logisticians. And I'm urging you, I'm asking you to commit to being a logistician and a recruiter. Now, what do recruiters do? Recruiters bring in the force that fights with what they have, with the weapons that are made for them. And I'm asking you to make a commitment to recruit just one person you know who's not here tonight that will be here next year for this engagement. This is important. And that's something you can do. And all you have to do is, you don't have to tell me, you don't have to tell Tony, you don't have to tell the general. Just do it. Become a recruiter for what is right. Show them the kind of courage you saw when those young Marines circled around, thanking God that Dexter and Smitty were going with them. And not one of those guys got hurt. Not those that were with that helicopter, with that dog, and that brave man. Second, logisticians. What's a logistician do? In the military, a logistician delivers bombs, beans, bullets, and Band-Aids. And in organizations like FRC and Freedom Alliance, logisticians deliver bucks. They all begin with B. But I'm urging you that if you become a recruiter and a logistician, you're going to change the outcome of what the left that you saw just in those 16 seconds intends to do to this country. And I want to make it very personal. Those 18 grandchildren that the good Lord lent my best friend and me, they deserve better than what that crowd of lefty crazies is going to do to them. And, I know, one of the things I just said a few moments ago, don't just talk about it, do it. So let me just show you how it's done. Everybody see those up there? Hey, Gil, you coming out? Come on out here, Gil. These are $9 a piece. These are going to be sent to every member of Congress. They're going to send as many as they can sell. And they're selling for $9 a piece, right?
Yes, sir.
And I want you to, remember, I didn't say just talk about it. Show it. I do that with my grandkids. I'm doing it with you. There's my $10. Keep the other $1 for FRC and send one of those to Nancy Pelosi with my name on it. All right, and I ask you to do the same thing. Don't go out of here without getting at least one of those hats. And remember, the slogan that the general and I were talking about slogans, De oppresso liber, semper fidelis. I just want you to know, in my organization that I grew up in, starting in 1961, that's more than a slogan. Always faithful is a way of life. God bless you. Thank you. Thank you.